Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be about how the narcissistic parents' gaslighting can raise children into adults who don't feel enough. They never feel enough during their childhood and they don't feel enough in their adulthood, often leading to a lot of confusion. Children need emotional support, and narcissistic parents, due to their sense of entitlement, due to their envy, and they can be envious of their own children. So if they're envious of something their children could potentially achieve, a narcissistic parent will tear that child down so the child doesn't achieve it, or they will take the credit for the child's achievements. Narcissists lack empathy, so they're unable to relate to their children's emotional needs. And narcissistic parents say an awful lot of damaging, gaslighting, invalidating words to their own children. Narcissistic parents neglect their children's emotional needs, leading to long-term effects on those children. Due to the narcissistic parents' selfishness, they can make their child feel like a burden. They can go at their child with phrases such as, "I wish you'd never been born. I wish I'd had an abortion. I wish I'd never had you." They can threaten to leave their children. Some narcissistic parents do this in a covert way, where they actually do leave their children when their children are not meeting the narcissistic parents' needs, and then they return when they want something from that child. And they can do this in the home when the child isn't doing what the narcissistic parent feels as to be desirable. They can ignore that child, criticize that child, judge the child, and then as soon as the child does something that the narcissistic parent feels to be desirable, the narcissistic parent can then shower that child with love, support and affection, which trains the child up to accept conditional love and to lose who that child is as a person, to become a person to serve the narcissistic parent. Narcissistic parents can make their children feel like a burden when they tell their children that they're costing them too much money, when they guilt trip their children by saying to their children, "I feed you, I raise you, I support you, you're nothing without me." When a narcissistic parent comes at their child and says, "I gave up my life for you," that's the narcissistic parent's responsibility. It's not the child's responsibility. However, the narcissistic parent seeks to pass responsibility over to the child for the things that the narcissistic parent doesn't want to be held responsible for. Narcissists don't like to take accountability for their own actions. They like to shift the blame. So when they're accusing their child of costing them too much, it's because the narcissistic parent doesn't want to spend money on the child. When they're saying they had to give up their life for the child, it's because the narcissistic parent is selfish and wants to do what they want to do. They want the child to fit in with them. They don't recognise that they need to also fit in with who the child is. A lot of narcissistic parents can have an ideal of the child they will be given. So they try to raise the child they wanted instead of raising the child they got. Instead of recognising the child for who they are, loving the child for who they are. A narcissist is preoccupied with their ideal. Parents are supposed to teach their children self-worth and to love themselves and to achieve what that child can achieve and to find their own individual personality. A narcissistic parent's going to devalue this. A narcissistic parent's going to claim that their child's too ugly, too fat, too thin. If only your hair was like this, your nose is crooked. They're going to find anything they can to invalidate the child's appearance because it's not pleasing to the narcissistic parent. Or it can be an insecurity of the narcissistic parents that the narcissistic parent passes on to their own child, causing those deep-rooted insecurities within their own child. A narcissistic parent will devalue their own child's personality. They will humiliate their child. They don't encourage them. If it's something the narcissistic parent doesn't like, if the narcissistic parent isn't into maths and the child likes maths and the child fails at maths because they haven't learned, they're in the learning process, the narcissistic parent is going to humiliate, criticize and judge that child rather than accept the child for who they are. If the child's into artwork and the narcissistic parent isn't into artwork, the narcissistic parent's going to criticize, judge and humiliate the child into not feeling like they're good enough at the subject the child, enjoys, because the narcissistic parent's not interested. Rather than encouraging them and supporting them and saying, you're very good, we just need to keep trying, we just need to keep learning, we just need to keep going, encouraging them, supporting them until the child succeeded, a narcissistic parent will discourage them, devalue them, invalidate them. If the child has a sense of humour, the narcissistic parent can tell the child that they're not funny. Or they can say simple phrases such as, why can't you just be normal? To get the child to question themselves. A narcissistic parent will triangulate their children against siblings, against cousins, against family members, against their friends. They will humiliate their children in front of their friends. Why can't you be more like so-and-so? Narcissistic parents will verbally abuse their children. They will call their children stupid. They will claim their children are idiots. They'll tell their own children that their own children are useless. When a child learns to walk and stumbles and falls over, we don't tell them they are useless. We encourage them to keep going until they get it. Life is one big learning curve. Sometimes we pick things up straight away. Sometimes it takes us a little bit longer. We are all individuals. A narcissistic parent goes all out to sabotage their children, to invalidate their children, to criticize their children, to judge their children, to tell them they're useless, to tell them that they're not good enough, to tell them they'll never achieve anything, they'll never be anything, because the narcissistic parent doesn't want the child to do better than the narcissist. A narcissistic parent will future fake with their own children. They will promise their children things and not deliver. Yes, parents can do this. Parents can promise their child something, and when the time comes, it doesn't pay off, it doesn't work out. With a narcissistic parent, this is a repeat pattern of behaviour, when they will let their children down and then promise them something to reel their children back in, to let their children back down, to promise them something to reel them back in, to let their children back down, to promise them something to reel them back in, to let their children back down. This isn't a case of a broken promise. This is a manipulation tactic to give children false hope, to let the child down. They might blame the child for letting the child down. They might claim that the child's done something that the narcissistic parent doesn't approve of. And it's not a case of a child hurt another child. So the parent gave that child consequences for their actions so that the child could learn, grow and develop, not to hurt other people. It's a case of the child hasn't done something, so the narcissistic parent will make up something the child has done, so the narcissistic parent doesn't have to deliver on that promise. And then they'll reel the child back in when it suits the narcissist to break that promise, to let the child down. And it's very confusing for young children. It's confusing for adults. But when it's your parents raising you, when you're reliant upon that person and they're teaching you conditional love, because narcissistic parents will come in, they will swoop in, they will pick up their child when it suits the narcissistic parent, And then they will drop that child like a hot potato when they're no longer interested. When the child is no longer meeting the narcissist's needs. Narcissistic parents invalidate their children. When their children have any kind of emotions, the narcissistic parent will tell the child to stop crying, that they're being too sensitive, that they're overreacting. When the child achieves something, the narcissistic parent might take credit for the achievement or dismiss the achievement altogether to invalidate the child, so the child doesn't feel enough, so that they feel wrong for having normal everyday emotions to the experience they are living, yet they are made to feel in the wrong for having those emotions. Narcissistic parents can just neglect by ignoring their child. They can just not speak to their child, to leave the child feeling confused. A narcissistic parent can sulk in front of the child. The parent can sit and stare at the TV and just completely ignore the child. And not because the parent's had a bad day, because the parent doesn't want to parent their child. Parents can all have bad days. Parents can all have moments. Parents can all be struggling with life issues and need to zone out. However, they would make sure that the child knows that it's nothing to do with the child, that it's on the parent. Narcissistic people find a way to blame the child for the narcissistic parent's problems. All this leads children to feel insecure, not feel like they're enough, don't feel like they deserve anything or anyone. Growing up with that low self-esteem, fear of doing things for fear of humiliation, fear of failure because they've been humiliated throughout their childhood, feeling like there's something wrong with them, developing things such as eating disorders, anxieties, depression, feeling like they're not enough and there is something wrong with them for just being themselves. They can grow up not knowing what true trust is, what unconditional love is, what support is. Learn to accept things such as neglect, silent treatment, people withholding attention, affection and support as normal and something that they must have done to that person, rather than really recognising it is not normal and that's on the other person, not on themselves. When you've been raised by this, it takes steps of recovery. And one is recognising how you talk to yourself, your inner voice, no longer talking to yourself how your narcissistic parent spoke to you. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be worth it? Yes. Monitor your mind, monitor your thoughts, work on yourself daily. Create routines for you. Find the things that you enjoy doing for you and practice daily until you achieve the things that make you happy. We have setbacks, we have bad moments, we have bad days, which is why you've got to consciously watch how you talk to yourself. You've got to monitor your thoughts, monitor your mindset, talk to yourself in a way that you are enough. Repeatedly tell yourself that you are enough, that you can do it, that you will do it, that you will find a way. Recognise what you want, recognise your outcome, focus on the outcome to keep you going through the difficult days. Never give up on you. You survived your childhood, you survived the pain. You have phenomenal coping mechanisms. You will survive recovery. You will create a better life for yourself. So go out there and go and create the life that you deserve, because you do deserve to have an amazing life. I shall add in the video description the video on more information on how narcissistic parents treat their children. Any gaslighting phrases that you heard from your parents, please add those into the comments. And if the memories have hit hard from your childhood, from your past, go and do something now that makes you happy, that alters your state of mind, that brings you back the feelings of joy. Go and work on yourself because you are worth it.